Hello everyone, we are back. This is going to be the final video about car finance. Slightly different video today because I'm going to read your comments and respond to some of them. There are quite a few comments, so I'm just going to pick them out at random. But this really is the last video I'm going to make about this. Okay, there's some people in there now, so. Okay, so I'm just going to start from the most recent comment down, okay? So, Patrick Maloney is the most recent commenter, and he says, you're just renting, which in real terms is a dead loss. I don't rate all this PCP rubbish, paying exorbitant monthly fees to drive a car, what seems like for a lifetime. Get a loan, purchase the car, at least in 3 years you will say you own it. So there are a lot of similar comments to this one about PCP deals not being very good and how I should have just taken a bank loan or paid for the car in cash instead. Personally, I would disagree. I think if you purchase a car of this value in cash, you're more likely to be stung by the loss because the depreciation is going to hit you much faster than it would in a PCP deal. And what I mean by this is my PCP deal is over a 4-year period with a guaranteed value. There is no guaranteed value if you purchase the car outright. Now that could go either way. You could either make a loss or you could make a profit, which I'm aware of. But let's say in 2 years' time, I decide that I want to trade this car in. I'm going to a degree, be protected from the depreciation of this car as opposed to me owning it outright. Because if I decide in 2 years' time I do want to sell the car, I'm going to have to face the reality of a £15,000 loss, potentially. Now, just to clarify a point I made in my previous video about the negative equity, I wasn't suggesting that Audi are going to refinance the negative equity for me, but just to give you some clarity on what I meant, I went into Audi about 2 weeks ago and I inquired about trading this car in because I wanted to know what my options were so soon into my agreement. Not because I was having second thoughts about the car, it was more just I wanted to know where I stood. And it all stemmed from me doing a valuation on Audi's website and me seeing how much my car's value had dropped in such a short period of time. So I went in, my car's in £15,000 negative equity. What Audi were able to do was they proposed a deal where I trade my car in for a Q7 and they could hide £14,000 of that negative equity into the margin of the car. So let's say, for example, the car was £60,000 to buy. They deducted £14,000 off of that price to hide the negative equity, and they treat that as a dealer deposit contribution. That is what I meant. So the same, and it's probably not going to be the exact same deal, but the same principle applies in that 2 years when I decide to trade the car in. They will be able to swallow up some of the negative equity as opposed to me just losing the money outright. That makes sense in my head. I don't know if I explained that very well, but there you go. Chris Smith says, don't buy new. One day folk will realise cars are a waste of good money. Far better things in life than wasting money on modern rot boxes. It's an interesting take on cars. Again, I would disagree. I don't see cars as a waste of money. I'm sure a lot of you don't see cars as a waste of money, which is probably why you're watching this video in the first place. To me, they're not the priority, but they're definitely up there in terms of things I enjoy spending my money on. Somebody asked, so Arjun, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, said, if you don't mind me asking, what career do you have which allows you to be paid 70k a year? That's impressive. There's a Skoda coming past. There we go. those people just drove around just to see what I was doing because they were parked on that side and the exit's there. Nosy bastards. So I spoke about this in my previous video. I'm a technical instructor. That means I teach people how to use systems. These systems tend to be very specific. I was very fortunate to kind of carve myself into this career. Before that, I worked in sales, so just to give you some background. Chris Nicholson has said, you don't technically own the car. It's Audi's car, excuse me, not yours. Not even close to yours. If you stop payment, the car goes back to Audi and you lose your deposit plus what you've paid so far. And this is where I think there's a real disconnect around this technicality of ownership. And a lot of you commented on my previous video to say that, how did I not know that I didn't own the car going into a PCP deal? So let me answer this comment first. I do own the car for as long as I make those payments. I have no plans to stop paying for the car, so there is no risk of the car going back to Audi and me losing my money. So that's one thing. For the duration that I'm paying for the car, it's mine, it's in my possession. Now, I'm aware that Audi are the legal owners of this car and they do have the right to take the car back if I stop paying for it. But I'm not going to stop paying for it. It is the exact same principle as a mortgage. Your house is the bank's until you've paid for it. They can take it back from you if you don't pay for it, but nobody goes into a mortgage with the intent of not paying for it. Now, in addition to that, it's my responsibility to ensure that I future-proof myself for all potential circumstances. So if I do lose my job, for example, I need to be in a position where I can protect myself for a period of time whilst I'm finding a new job. That's just on me. The same goes for my mortgage. I need to do the same in that regard too. Now, I think that a lot of people go into a PCP deal without realizing that they aren't necessarily the technical owners of the car. And I think a lot of people walk into a bank and get a mortgage without realizing that they aren't the technical owners of their house. But that's all it is a technicality which most people don't pay no mind to because nobody's in the mindset of, well, when I stop paying in June, the house will still be mine. Or when I stop paying for the car in June, the car will still be mine. They can't take my car. Like, it just doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. Okay. Next comment is from Jason Edwards. Even with HP, you do not own the car until the final payment. I can't really comment on that because HP deals have never really appealed to me. The monthly payments are through the roof and you run a higher risk of the depreciation of the car. Plus, I believe you don't have the same flexibility that you do with a PCP deal and being able to just hand the car back whenever you want. I could be wrong. Like I said, I don't know too much about HP deals, so do bear with me there. And then Chris H commented, the bit about modifying isn't quite right. Unless you have some sort of unicorn deal, you can't make mods without prior approval. Now that part is not true. So I am able to modify the car, but I have to return the car to Audi. If I decide to return the car to Audi in 2 years, 4 years, it has to be like that. It has to be as it came from Audi. All that means is I modify the car and I revert it back to normal. That's a standard thing. Like, for anybody who has had cars on finance before and made changes to them, that's just how it works. I don't know if different dealerships offer different or have different restrictions around that, but at least with Audi you are able to modify the car and then just revert it back when you're ready to. Someone's calling me. John Tiller, my God, are you serious? please stop giving your money to finance companies. Car finance is for muppets. Lovely car for sure, and I can see why you might want one, but if you don't have the 50 grand to pay for it, don't have one. Good advice, my friend. I'm not sure if he's given himself a pat on the back there with that last part, but again, this just falls into the same kind of remit as the paying for cars on finance, paying for them in cash. I don't believe that paying for a car in cash is a wise move. Equally, I don't believe that paying 50 grand deposit for a car is a wise move. Just my opinion. Hack commented, did he just stop that good man from working? So this relates to, we got a Mini Cooper S now. Hopefully they're going up the top. He's driving like a bit of a tit, so they're parking. This relates to my previous video where I stopped the cleaner guy from walking into my video. Now, I didn't actually stop him, I just said to him, you're going to be in my video, does that bother you? It didn't seem to bother him. No big deal. Kaiser 9100 commented, appreciate the honesty in this video. I wish more of the big YouTubers would do the same. I can't really comment on them. Can't really comment on them, if I'm being honest. You know, that's their money, it's their business. They handle it however they see fit. Andrew Baker quoted me, I can drive it wherever I want. Sure, as long as you don't go over the mileage stated on the contract. So technically you can drive it wherever you want, just not that often. So 12,000 miles a year on this contract. Wanted 12,000 because I knew that I would be driving the car to different places, different countries, etc. No plans to go over that. Sinan Ozdemir, oh man, you should stop with these vids, you're wrong again, you do have the option to buy the car at the end of the lease. Now firstly, they've spelled buy BY, no comment on that, but again, in some cases you can buy a car at the end of a lease, but as far as I'm aware, you have limited options in buying the car at the end of a lease. Plus, you end up buying a car at the end of the lease is, in my opinion, and I only have limited experience of this. So my 2015 Audi RS3 was on a lease, and I had that on a lease for 3 years, and I was paying £512 per month for that car. Now fortunately, the company I worked for, they paid for the car, so it wasn't actually coming out of my pocket. But at the end of the lease, before I actually bought this car, or well, before I bought my Abarth, I had the option to buy it. They sent me for a quote, and it was £25,700 for a 2015 Audi RS3 with 36,000 miles on it. You can see why that just doesn't appeal to me. Ryan Steen, how the fuck did you get an RS3 not knowing what finance deal you have? I do. A new video to follow soon. Another mistake, modifying a PCP car. I've clarified that. Frank McCullough, it's like saying your house isn't yours until the mortgage is paid in full. It's still your house, and in this case, it's still your car. Thank you. Somebody who finally gets what I'm talking about. If you're wondering what I'm doing, by the way, when I'm crouching down like that, I'm looking through the barriers. Just thought I'd explain that. Let's scroll down a bit more because I'm kind of going from top down. So let's look at some older cars. So S44YYR, you know very little about car financing. I actually replied to this comment on YouTube and said I'm realizing that now. Cry face. I bet you ain't got Waitrose permission to film on their property. I'm sure they don't mind. How much is insurance? It is $1160 a year at the moment. Clear your garage out and paint the walls white and ready for the RS3. I have actually thought about doing this. The only downside is my garage has no power outlet, so I could run, you know, a super long extension cable from my house, but I don't think you're allowed to do, well, I mean, obviously you can do it, but I think if there were any accidents like fires, etc., you would just get crucified immediately. So I'm looking into the potential of maybe like solar panels instead, but I need to look into that. Tom Stewart, on too long again, and after the views by the title again. Not really sure what he's saying there. Let's have a look. Trigger Bite, great video and a very nice Datejust 2. I have the Wimbledon Datejust 2, beautiful watch. Thank you very much. For those of you who aren't familiar, he's talking about my watch. Is it really worth it for 1 or 2 extra looks when you drive to the shop or work? Yes, is the short answer. Yes, it is. It's also worth it for the sound. Kieran Blacker, end of the day, you get to drive an RS3 and I don't. I'm still saying free, aren't I? I know there's some people in the comments immediately just like, fuck. Let's go down a bit more. PCP is a lease, for fuck's sake. You are hiring the car, says Evren Sockmaner. A PCP is not a lease. There we go. Let's go down a bit further. Should have stuck with S3, 0 deposit and £300 cheaper per month. Very true, however, the S3 was starting to show its age a bit, and I was also getting bored of the car. Also, as I've said in videos about the S3, it was way too stiff. It was like just driving on rails. I hated it toward the end because it didn't have mag ride. They call him Dangerous Brian, has said, I'm thinking of taking a loan out for an M5 E60, which is an older car, but a nice naturally aspirated engine. I agree. Those M5s are beautiful. The engines sound great. The only downside is they are a little unreliable. So do some research first before you commit. Real good video, keep it up. Thank you, Haroon Hassan. Benwood 2007. Clearly you are not comfortably affording that car if you are worrying about paying for it after 8 days out of work. What would you do if you lost your job for longer? God forbid. I think this video is a message of how not to buy a car. So this is an interesting take. I use the 8 days as an example. You know, whether it's a day, 8 days, 30 days, 60 days, if you can afford to support yourself for that long, then great, which I could. However, I think the worry stays because you're thinking longer term, you know, okay, 6 months down the line, 9 months down the line, what am I going to do? So that worry is kind of unavoidable in my opinion. But fortunately I was able to, you know, kind of do a bit of a quick turnaround in that sense. Carl Price said, I would love to give one of these a spin. You should try bring it to the Twisties and the Brecon Beacons. Got to say though, the MPG ain't great. I would love to check that out. I am all open for checking out new roads. You know, fortunately living in the countryside, there are a lot of nice roads around here. However, I'm always open to new ones. And yeah, the MPG is not great. It's really not great. The thing with this car is, it has like 3 tones, so 3 engine tones, right? So it's got dynamic, so when you're in sport is when it's at its loudest. That's where you're going to be just burning fuel. Then you have like comfort or drive, and drive is quiet, you know. It's got a bit of a grunt, but it's quiet. But there's kind of like this drive mode which is in between, which I discovered by accident. So if I choose dynamic, let's say, it immediately goes into sport. If I pull the lever down to go back into drive, it still has a louder noise, like a much gruntier sound, but the gear changes are, you know, regular as opposed to sport. I'll have to try and show you so that you know what I mean, but I think because I drive the car around most of the time in that mode, because I want the sound, it's probably going through the fuel a little bit more. So Jack Naylor said, not sure why, but I have been sitting watching a load of your videos tonight. Keep it up. The original ones you made were a bit shit mind, but the car ones decent. Keep on trucking. So I appreciate your honesty, Jack. I would wholeheartedly agree with you. My kind of initial videos, I say initial, the first year of videos I made on this channel are a bit shit. My whole point of starting this channel was it was like a creative expression. You know, I was always into photography. I wanted to kind of broaden that into making videos. I decided to give it a go one day and just kept on going, and eventually transitioned into making car videos. But yeah, those first videos were not great. So I would want an RS4 or an RS6 for that kind of monthly payment. Again, I think an RS4 is probably a little bit more achievable for that monthly payment with a higher deposit. An RS6, when I last checked, was over $1,000. So, but that was for an RS6 Performance. I'm sure you could probably get a second-hand RS6 for a little cheaper. Let's have a look. Just scrolling through, bear with me. I really like the spec. I think there are too many blacked out Audis these days, so it's nice to see something different. And that was from SGD TV. Thank you very much. That's exactly what I thought. I didn't want another black car. I had a black S3. My bath was black. They're a pain in the ass to keep clean. They always look shit when they're dirty. Yeah. And a lot of people will say that black cars look the best when they are clean. However, I think this could be a strong contender for that, I've got to be honest. Chicken Sandwich has said, end of the day, he kept it real and told us everything. He didn't have to make these videos. Giving hate is just daft. That's rude and jealous. Thank you very much for the support, Chicken Sandwich. So Josh Dawkins, I would like to hear about your career path. I am an MA student in history, graduating this year, and would love to hear how you got to your position. So I'm happy to make a separate video about this. You know, I can go into my entire career history, the details of the roles, etc. Just let me know in the comments if that's something that you'd be interested to do. Rupert Elliott commented to say, how come you didn't get a bank loan? Well, I think that a bank loan is, so in my mind, and again, not a finance expert, but I think that an unsecured bank loan is more impactful on your credit file than a secured asset, because regardless of how you see the car, in terms of your credit file, it is seen as an asset. So paying towards an asset is always going to reflect better than if you have an unsecured loan, especially when it comes to a mortgage. So if you're going through a mortgage application, they're going to question you more about the unsecured loan as opposed to the car, because the car is the car, whereas an unsecured loan, they're going to want to know, okay, so why did you take the loan? What did you pay for? Blah, 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 blah. At least that's how it kind of works in my head. Let's scroll down a bit more. Goncalo Francisco, again, apologies if I'm butchering the name. Great video, really appreciate the honesty. I think someone's come in the car park listening to drum and bass. And then we have Stephen Herndon. So just to give you some background on Stephen, unfortunately Stephen was the first person to be blocked on my YouTube channel. I'm all game for freedom of speech and opinion and stuff, but to be honest, he was starting to just get really fucking annoying. Because he was just commenting on all my videos and commenting on people's comments. So here's a comment: another Audi buying sheep. Oh wait, you are just renting it. Typical clueless Brit in debt. Audi just happens to be my preference ever since my 2008 Audi A3. I've just liked Audis. I like the sound, I like the way they look. It just works for me. You know, just the same as BMW work for other people and Mercedes work for other people. They're all great cars. At the end of the day, it was my choice. So what are the 5 things that you'd spend 50k on if you had it? I'm interested. So this was a comment from Damien Hosty, and then Martin Brownwood responded with sluts, 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 and more sluts. I don't approve of that approach, nor do I support women being called sluts. But 5 things I'd rather spend 50k on. So number 1, I would rather put the money towards a property, maybe a second property, or maybe number 2, renovating. Well, actually my house is new, so it doesn't need renovating, but maybe expanding my current property, you know, doing things like putting the solar panels on my garage, or, you know, just having a really good kind of setup in that sense. Number 3 is I would rather spend the 50k on memories. So what I mean by this is going on holidays, seeing places, traveling, and being able to do that with 3, you know, my fiance and our baby, costs money, so I would rather spend the money on stuff like that instead. Number 4 is similar. I would rather put that money into a savings account for my daughter so that she has some money when she's a little older. When I was, you know, younger, I had no money at all, so I really had to just jump right into work. And as much as that's a common story, people work hard every day, many of you will know that it's very challenging. So there are certain challenges I think I would like her to avoid if I could help it. And then number 5, which is going to be a bit of a surprising one, is I would probably rather buy older cars. I think I would rather buy a collection of older cars. So I'd really like to own an E46 M3 manual. So I'm not a complete BMW hater. I would quite like to own the I'm not sure actually. I've always liked the idea of owning like a Mark 1 or Mark 2 Escort, but at the same time, real wild card, but the Fiesta ST, the most recent one, not the newest Fiesta, the one before it, is such a great car to drive that I would like to have one of those too. I'd like to have an Escort Cosworth, an RS500. I would really like a short wheelbase Audi Quattro. I'd like an old B5 RS4. Yeah, many cars that I'd probably rather buy, older cars, if I had the cash. And then I think this will be the last comment. Mr. Venditto has asked, what's the fuel consumption like between hard and normal driving? I'll be completely honest with you, there is not much difference at all. There you go. Really not much difference. And yeah, so that's just me reading some of your comments. I thought it would just be good to just, you know, kind of, because I've been trying to go through and reply to all of the comments, but when you have a baby it's quite hard to do that, so I thought I'd just make a video, talk through some of them, and just really wrap up this series of videos. So as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, and I appreciate this is a long video, so if you've made it this far, thank you very much. But this is going to be the last one. I'm not going to talk about this anymore. I think I've said everything I needed to say. you know, I've learned a lot too through the comments, and I do appreciate everybody who has taken the time to watch these videos, like them, dislike them, subscribe on them, no, comment on them. As I mentioned, my next video is going to be the running costs video, and the reason that's slightly delayed is because I want it to be as factual as possible. So I already have the tyre prices, I have a rough idea of how much it's going to cost servicing, but there are a few things like how much does it cost to change the brakes, etc., that I'd like to include in the video. So when the Audi garage opens up tomorrow, I'm going to be asking them questions, okay? So yeah, again, didn't expect this response to my finance videos, but I think it's been interesting, and yeah, that's going to be it for today's video. So peace.